Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
Alrighty, here we go. So, got none other than Thomas Aquinas Lindaman.
Greetings and hallucinations.
Hallucinations. Plenty of them on here, especially in these comedies. So I thought we would just dig through some indie comedies that don't get talked about enough for a third time.
That sounds like a plan.
And just, I mean, these were inevitable. It's just at any video stores or just cable channels. It's like we just came across some movies that kind of just weren't afraid to be themselves. So, welcome. I will let the guest go first.
All right. As you and many of your listeners may know, I am an aficionado of bad sci-fi horror movies.
Perfect.
So some of these are going to be ones that are near and dear to my heart for the very reason because they're bad, but they're also very good when it comes to comedy. One of the ones I'm going to start off with one that is a little higher tier than the ones later ones I'll mention. One of my favorite indie comedies of the last decade or so has been Seeking a Friend for the End of the World.
Nice. That's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be a good movie when in the first scene it sets up the premise and hits you with an incredibly great joke that I don't know if I was the only one in the theater really laughing hard at it, but I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant.
Yeah. The guy from CSI dies a terrible death, and it's a fun movie also in that it's just kind of, it's like, well, the world's going to shit. I guess we better get ready to die. And it's just kind of a fun kind of just, it's also a road movie. So again, going with another theme like we did when we did this last time, is like, it's also just a lot of good character development happens in a diner.
Yeah, but the thing that I like, especially with indie movies, is that they're not afraid to cross genres. There'll be horror comedy, or there'll be, like you said, with the road movie, with a little bit of comedy, a little bit of dark comedy here. Just little pieces. They're not afraid to take chances, and even if they don't pan out, they might create an enjoyable moment. It's like, you know what they haven't done yet? Citizen Kane on roller skates.
Perfect.
That's one I can't recommend highly enough. It's one of those when, after I saw it in the theater, when it came available on DVD, I made sure to grab a copy. It's like, because it's a movie that you can watch again and again and still get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
It really is a lot of fun, and like you say, it's gonna definitely appeal to those of us who like just cheesy stuff because it's deliberately fun, and it's just also just kind of like there's a lot of well-timed gags instead of just being depressing or going on too long or too cartoonish for its own good or so bad it's good, but
Exactly.
But still in a very difficult, varying way. And very well said. And what was your favorite gag in the whole thing?
I would have to say it's that opening gag. That
Just alone.
it's just like
Sets up.
you cannot, as good as they are, they could not do any better when it comes to actually crafting a joke than in that first scene. I won't spoil too much for you, but it involves a morning DJ.
Perfect. Was he an actual DJ, or was that just part of the?
I think it was just the actor for the role.
Okay, I don't remember the scene, but I just remember all the other stuff that happens. Funny how I'm wired. No, very cool. I got one that is kind of known, but kind of still not talked about all that much. I'm gonna go with The List. Before you make your jokes, it stars Sidney Poitier's daughter, Tamia, who's a big TV actress now, and Wayne Brady and Brad Dourif.
You had me at Wayne Brady.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun. At first, you're kind of like, okay, whatever, just the poster and everything just looked like a typical kind of TV kind of movie, but it played at a festival and it apparently won an international writing contest. And you think of all the ways it could have not worked and could have even been bigger, and it's like, no, it was just right because it was written by a comedian. It used the typical kind of poster to make easy money, but it's got a bunch of other Canadian actors and other comedians who've been around forever, like Lena Douglas. It helps that it just kind of, again, it's just very restricted to just being witty with the dialogue. Even with part of the poster, like it gets down some of the wits, but that's it. The rest is just a cheap Photoshop job. It's like, no, this is a very good movie, and it flies by like no tomorrow. And it's an easy watch. Anyone could watch it. There'd be different crowds who would all pick up on it and find it to be just a fun spoof of kind of the ad executive agency and awkward first dates, but it doesn't. It avoids all the
pitfalls.
Yeah, it makes fun of the tropes of that, and it's like, okay, well, and some people didn't like it, but for the most part, it had a pretty solid rating, and it's like, it's just a pleasant surprise, and it helps that it kind of makes fun of that, Frank Capra-esque, business versus life kind of thing, also without overplaying it for the billionth time, because so many movies bastardize that concept, as we know. And the indie director, he's done a lot of movies, other independent stuff, and has since gone on to even write for TV. So I think that helped too, that he was just used to just, making movies on the fly and, making everybody happy. And it's like, okay, well, cool, because a lot goes a long way. And
exactly.
But yeah, this movie just really overall appealed to, in terms of just also kind of making fun of just what people want in life versus what people find appealing, and that just gave all the comedic talent a lot to work with, and even all the featured actors who only have one scene. I mean, it didn't feel restricted by its budget to where you're just like, ho hum, and then there's going to be some wacky music that plays because exit stage right. No, it's like they had to make this work, and
and that is a tough thing to do when you have great writing, you have such great talent, and it's really easy to oversell. It really is.
It really is. And I totally forgot Theo from Cosby Show and Jane Lynch are both briefly in here. and they don't outstay their welcome or feel lesser used. They could have probably used them a little more, but they were pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yep. And you pretty much closed it out there, so yeah, I'll let you go on to the next one.
Alrighty, this is another one that's I put it in a higher tier than some of the other ones I'll be talking about. But it is this kind of runs into a theme that'll be coming through some of the other movies. This is a movie called Fido.
Ooh, Tony Connolly and Carrie-Anne Moss, I think, right?
It basically takes the zombie trope, kind of gives it a 50s era sheen to it, and just has some incredibly laugh out loud moments. When you have like the comedic genius of a Billy Connolly as Fido, who he doesn't say very much, but he does so much that makes you laugh, and also a surprisingly good performance given what she was known for before this movie, by Carrie-Anne Moss.
Right.
Talk about going to the complete opposite of the spectrum here. But she did a fantastic job. Billy Connolly was, without having very much in dialogue, he really did make up for it with simple gestures, looks, the kind of things that great comedians know how to do to elicit the biggest possible laugh.
Right.
Plus the absurdity of the whole thing about domesticating zombies, and there's a whole murder mystery involved. And it's got a cute little message at the end too, kind of the saccharine sweet kind from the 50s, but still, it's an enjoyable romp. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's another one of those that when I saw it, I bought it instantly because I absolutely fell in love with it.
Perfect. I do need to rewatch it. I do recall it being way better than Dance of the Dead, which was just dull and not as much like it or hate it as, say, what's the one? Dead Snow. And it's like, yeah, but this is this is kind of more like Cooties, where it's trying to be kind of like a Howling or Gremlins kind of movie, just shit hitting the fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it's one of those that once you see it, you're just like, dang, that's good.
By all means. Very, very good choice. My pick next might just have to be another typical one. Previously, I already did a few other ones that were kind of goofy and making fun of. But here's one made by future schlock makers, The Asylum of all people. That's right, people. They once did a wacky, deliberate, cheesy movie, and while its budget does occasionally distract, I mean, it's made with heart. It's just basically, and it made sense that they had a lot of comedians from Whose Line and Mad TV, including Deborah Wilson and Colin Mockery, and it's just showing how people who literally are just left alone all day and watch nothing but TV, that's pretty much what they get. Right. But like this gal was like, she was kind of abused, and she meets all these other just weirdos and everything, and it's just all the characters bite into their off-color and gross caricatures so well, and the special features are even funnier too. I'll definitely mention more to that when the time comes for that episode, but it was just so funny just seeing them just never ending. Will Wheaton is also in it as like the love interest, and he really just eats it up and just but yeah, Jane White, she's really sick and twisted.
And we like that here.
Right? Oh, man. I mean, pretty much just watching it, you kind of just get a sense of like, okay, this is also a summary of Adult Swim. Tim and Eric. Like, TV you should not be watching, and yet you are. Here you are. Phil Lamar, Brad Sherwood.
No.
Also in it. It's just who was it? Even the MC himself, Gary Owens.
Oh yes.
Voice actor is in there, and it's just wild. I'm like, I knew that voice sounded familiar.
I'm Gary Owens.
Oh god, it's great. You can go for IMDb, you'll see a few shitty reviews, and it's like it seems like people who just don't like a lot of independent stuff unless it just looks the part. I'm like, yeah, it showed its budget a few times, but not to where it lost any sense of what it was.
Absolutely.
The trivia claims there are more than 200 TV references. I would beg to differ. I think there were 400 references. Oh man. Well, next pick, Haru. Doesn't have to be 10, just pick and choose.
All right. And speaking of Sick and Twisted, this is a movie that was truly self-aware, a lot better than the sequel that came after it.
It's a
This is
sequel.
prequel. Yep, there was a prequel. There was a sequel to the original movie, but there's also a prequel. Then the prequel is the one I absolutely loved. It's a little ditty they call Manos, The Rise of Torgo.
I love that. I love it.
It captures the heart of one of the characters from the original Manos, The Hands of Fate, but it is so self-aware that it's not serious that it works. There'll be somewhere with bad movies, there are some movies that are unintentionally funny, like The Room, and others that try too hard to be funny and they loses its step. This one had the right combination.
Stephen Schultz really did look like Torgo really well. It's such a shame that he's got to duplicate a guy who really did have an unusual injury in it that just ended up playing because of the hack filmmaking. It's like,
yeah, and the cool thing about it is even if you didn't know the original source material, you knew Torgo, and he's such a lovable guy. I couldn't help but just you want the best for him, and even though I knew what was going to happen to him, it was like I still feel for this guy, still want it to do well. And if you have a character like that you can identify with, then you know what? You've got yourself the core of a great movie.
Absolutely. And believe it or not, guys, we are going to review the entire Mono saga. So get ready for that trilogy. The Hands.
I'll run the machine while the master is away.
The master's away. The Hands, the Rise, the Returns. Oh. I saw some people blow this one off, including Brian Orendorff of Blu-ray.com, and it just got to where it's like, you guys. At least the video vacuum understood it. Oh, we've had him on the show a few times. He is wonderful. And he said it best itself. He's like, I can't quite call it good, but I admire the fact that it knew when to quit. And it's better than the original. Not that it was difficult to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, the movie just was really well paced. The last one that they made fun of, which was like a direct sequel, and of course it sucked. It didn't even show. It was like a prequel to it. It made no sense, and it just really lost any sense of where it wanted to go. And this one, I think, was just better at just kind of just expanding on it while just kind of having a lot of fun that just showed on screen. And the fact that is like it was made by people who like bad movies, and I mean, I don't expect much from a gal named Kojia Atomic. Yes, that's her. That a lot of the cast who had worked with her before, had worked on this, so it's like, okay, well, so pretty easy to make when everyone's on the same page, because there's been plenty of times where people make a movie with their friends and it still just turns out terrible, because to where even people who like us who like trash just still are just like, yeah, but there really wasn't anything to it. There just wasn't any love. This one, I wouldn't be surprised if Full Moon ends up buying it. It just was a lot of wackiness to it. Intentional gags, playing to the camera while knowing when to cut away and say, let's move on to the next skit and see if that lands better.
Oh, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this one. Kentucky Fried Movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's another one where I really kind of do miss that day when people would, that and the Groove Tube were just kind of just showing how you could have an anthology kind of movie.
Yeah. I was trying to remember the other one because I knew
Amazon Women on the Moon.
Yeah, but I've seen both and thoroughly enjoyed both. But for me, Kentucky Fried Movie is the gold standard of movies like that.
I think so. I think a lot of people even come around to it because there's a lot of martial artists in it, just like Cannonball Run.
But you can't go wrong with a movie called Fistful of Yen.
I mean, what else would you expect?
And I think so far the only movie that's even come close to duplicating that has been the Onion movie.
Yeah, I mean, that was another one where they just knew how to organize the gags, and it's like, well, there's something for everybody, and each skit is like 3 minutes, so you don't have to wait that long if you're not enjoying that one to enjoy the other one, and it's not hit and miss to where you got to just turn it off or fast forward. It's got something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'm gonna go with another one called Floundering. This is another one I would always see it on everyone's resume because Ethan Hawke was in it. Viggo Mortensen was listed as a homeless guy. I think he appears during the credits because I don't really didn't see him in the movie. But it was an interesting movie because James Lee Rose, that's right, from Phantasm 2 and Point Break, just had just a wacky movie where he's just daydreaming. He's being driven crazy by the Rodney King riots that were a thing at that time. It came out 2 years after that, but it just really just kind of just had that kind of just drifter in LA, just kind of coming across a bunch of stuff, falling in love with this dangerous queenpin, coming across a congressman, and having to discern what stuff is just kooky stuff that's going on in his head versus
What's actually happening.
And the movie does a good job of just being just so off kilter, just so uncanny to where it's just like, okay, now I'm really disappointed that this does not ever get played on places like Comedy Central or even barely any movie channels. It's like, yeah, I mean, this is the right kind of. You even got to be in a lazy day because that's where you'll even get more enjoyment out of it because it's a very energetic. It could easily be a lazy movie, and it looks like it was marketed to that kind of crowd, but it is so not. It is just like, this is what happens if you just stand alone by yourself and just go insane. And you can totally feel like the filmmakers that's just what caused their creativity. Is like someone was just drifting around being driven crazy and is like, well, what I'm thinking might land with somebody because I know someone will know exactly what I'm thinking.
And the voices in my head say I'm sane, so it's a good movie.
Right, the voices. I should listen to them.
All right. I have another one that's from across the pond.
Okay.
It's a little movie called Cockneys versus Zombies.
Oh, did I see that one? I think I did.
Yeah, I was introduced to it at a New Year's Eve party with some friends of mine, and
oh yeah, I rated this one pretty bad.
that, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's one of those weird combinations, but almost like what Sam Raimi did in Evil Dead 2, Cockneys versus Zombies did it in this movie. They combined the horror elements with a little bit of humor, and just seeing old Cockneys running down zombies, that made me remember that movie.
One hell of a movie.
Oh yeah.
There's like some very unusual gunplay. Oh, and more or less, I think you could say it was good at just kind of approaching just again just all the England does they just going around.
It's like they took the idea from Shaun of the Dead, but then they took it a little bit in a different location and made it work.
Hope so. I mean, it didn't work for me, but it is what it is. It's a fun kind of trash fest too, at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh man. And that was definitely around the time when I think we did talk about this when we did the zombie segment. It was interesting just seeing just people try something on a low budget.
And boy, did it work.
It worked. I got like 3 more, and I guess we can then call it an episode. I had this one called The Tio of Steve, and yes, it stars Donald Logue. And, it's kind of just another fun kind of just tough to describe kind of movie. Just kind of a loser, just kind of again.
Typical Donald Logue character.
There you go. And he just basically, just has all these just wacky scenarios that he just frequents around. Being a kindergarten teacher, being a poker player, hanging out with dogs, golfing, and then, again, promiscuous sex. And so it's just like, and it does a good job of just even organizing just the whole scenario. And the whole thing is just very briskly paced, and all the actors have a lot to dig into.
All right. That sounds like my kind of movie.
Yeah, it doesn't overdo it, and it doesn't also become just kind of even just the kind of movie where you're like, well, that was poorly thought out, but I kind of laughed a few times.
All right. My last one. It's one of those unintentional comedies.
Perfect.
It's another zombie movie, but it is so laughably bad that I laughed my way through it. It was just all the absurdity and all the fun things that are going on in it. It's called. Hopefully I remember this. It's like Zombies on a Plane, Flight of the Living Dead.
Oh, perfect. And it's kind of much like Snakes on a Plane. It's got some deliberate comedy, and it's got plenty of unintentional comedy, which says a lot for a movie that's a knockoff of another movie.
The best scene in the entire movie, and I will go to my grave saying this, is when they have one of the characters is a golf player. A golfer, well-known golfer. He takes a zombie's head, hits it with a club, and it goes right into a hole in the floor of the plane.
Oh my god!
That alone made it worth the price of admission. But I got introduced to this ditty by a not a close friend, but a friend of mine who used to run a comic book shop, and he would always have, right around October, he would always have a zombie fest. And he would show good zombie movies, bad zombie movies. That's also how I got introduced to Sugar Hill, which is one of my favorite bad movies of the 70s.
Oh, perfect.
But this one was particularly good because of that one scene, and you could see the different players kind of trying to hold in what they would say. This is absurd. This is bullshit. Are you sure this is how Olivier got his start? Yeah, but it's one of those movies that you can pop some popcorn, sit down, and kind of enjoy it. And you can, especially if you're in the mindset to make little jabs and jokes at the movie's expense.
By all means, and more or less, I think you summed up also that these movies really are done with a lot of fun. A lot of just invaluable people who know the kind of lowbrow material movie that they're making without just, acting like they don't want to be here or rushing the process, making it intentionally shitty. Is like, okay, well,
Yeah, it's not a
heart.
Corman film. It's not Sharknado, but it's
something.
It's there.
It's something else. Yeah. Another one that just really kind of I've talked about before briefly when we talked to Steve Buscemi was the Search for One-Eyed Jimmy. I just was like floundering. I just dug how that movie was just like a bunch of just New York type guys just going around. Sam Jackson playing a weird guy with a hook, and a bunch of these other future Sopranos actors are in it, and just the rare sense of just foul mouth comedy without just overdoing the foul mouthness, and both Totoro brothers were in it, John and Nick, so that was funny. It also just kind of played on that whole just wait, your friend disappeared for what? I heard he disappeared because of this and that, and just that, and I can't think of anyone who's seen it and didn't find it pretty funny. So this says a lot. I saw it on Rapid Share back in the day when that was a thing. So another one that just I think again it's made for that kind of just find it on TV is Kissing Jessica Stein. This was one that played on the movie channels nonstop, and it's like, well, so what kind of a movie is it? And it's like, well, it's this woman who falls in love with another woman, but it's much like some of the other ones I've talked about. Is like talking about Steve is like it's really good at just organizing just all these atypical individuals without just again grossing it out to where you're like, I really don't want to watch it anymore, or it's chick flick or anything. Is like, no, this is just the perfect rare kind of crowd pleaser because the characterization was there, the actors knew what the characters were, and the right kind of independent actors who've also been in every kind of movie.
Like, oh, it's that one guy from that one thing.
Mm-hmm. Plenty of that. And more or less, I mean, it really helps when you got again an invaluable cast who is just willing to just kind of just be so natural with their performances. You had Tova Feldschuh, who's been a bunch of different kinds of movies and shows, and you've often seen her play judges on various shows. She was even a brief recurring role on Crossing Jordan, and as well as M. Night's Lady in the Water. And yeah, I mean, she the whole cast is just a delight, and I know the guy later went on to do a lot of other wackier movies, but this was kind of the rare kind of just like, yeah, but it really worked.
Yeah, and to be fair, there are a lot of movies that they're kind of off the beaten path.
Right.
But I just thought of another one that I thoroughly enjoyed. One is called The Foot Fist Way. It's a martial arts movie, kind of.
Now, what was your first clue?
Cover art, really. Guy standing with his gi and with all his gear on. Yeah, but that one was one of those that I saw it and just said, you know what? It's not one of my top favorites, but it's one I will definitely watch.
Right. They did good. Trying to remember where I saw that. I think I was just on the internet one day. It was just one of those like, but it is a pretty wacky movie. Because Danny McBride, he's shameless. He'll do anything. And
Of course.
he's kind of played on that motive before, but he just hasn't really gone back to it yet. It's like, yeah, it does make you wonder, will he go back to it? That kind of stuff.
He's got a will full of that kind of comedy, so I think he'll be okay. And there was another one that's kind of similar. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but it was a movie where it talked about a martial arts master making a movie and trying to shop it around as a martial arts movie, and actually has a scene with Lorenzo Lamas.
Oh my god.
I wish I could remember the name of it, but it's one of those that caught me off guard. I was enthralled by the story idea and from the cover art, and then when I watched it, it was like, this is possibly one of the best low key comedies I've ever seen.
Sounds like our kind of movie.
Yeah. I don't know if I still own it. If I do, I will look it up and make sure I get that information to you, because it's one of those that I want to give it as a gift.
There you go. We all got to trade out our various tapes and everything anyway.
It's like the Misty do. Keep circulating the tapes.
Mm-hmm. Make your copies before they become collector's items. I hate that. I guess to wrap it up, I got this other one called 2 Days that also stars Donald Logue and also has a young unknown Paul Rudd.
Ooh.
And it handles the various scenarios really well. Just because it's technically a drama, but it's also a comedy, just showing this kid who's, struggling actor in LA, and he's decided, I give you permission to film a documentary where I'm going to kill myself. And so it's just another, just break the fourth wall. And it really does handle the both blends very naturally, because again, just the people they got, are just, they can do both. So
yeah, there's breaking the fourth wall, then there's completely demolishing the entire building to get to the fourth wall.
Right. And when you're not even breaking the fourth wall anymore, and you're just handling both, this is a tricky subject. And I mean, for a guy who had a bunch of indie movie filmmakers making a rare, just kind of more mainstream appearance, they did pretty good too at timing it out. So it was like, well, that says a lot,
Yeah, and that's one of the other things I love about indie movies, especially bad ones. Sometimes inadvertently they make a good point.
Right. It's like someone went the extra distance. It's like, if you give them something better, they can make a better movie. Some of them can't, but some of them will.
We can rebuild it. We have the technology.
We have the power.
At the risk of alienating listeners, let's not go into the He-Man stuff.
Oh, God. Oh, boy. Well, if you got any other comedies, intentional or not.
Well, I can always go to one of my favorites, Danger Death Ray.
Oh, perfect.
It's a spy movie. It's a bit of a musical. It's kind of stupid. It is Danger Death Ray.
Danger Death Ray.
What would happen if some wacky scientists come up with a death ray for peaceful purposes only?
Peaceful? Who said anything about that? Going door to door.
Plus you'll get the theme song in your head, and it will never leave you.
Oh, dear. It's definitely one of those where it's like, you do kind of wish that people could do kind of stuff like that nowadays, where it's like, okay, well, so we're gonna make a wacky movie, and if we fail, we're gonna make it better.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All, sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time.
Ah,
Tangents galore.
yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Ah, yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ.
Ah,
We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
ah, ah,
all
ah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. don't run the listeners away, PJ.
Ah, I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we're going to end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
could you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-liner plot holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zemenov. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zemenov, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zemenov, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zemenov.
Hi, everybody. It's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything: pictures, videos, blogs, There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VD Clinic Pod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VD Clinic Pod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.